So I'd love to just ask you, why do you think that so many high-performing leaders are doing so well and they're so intentional at work, but then they're struggling to lead the same way at home?
Well, Allie, thank you first of all for letting me come on the podcast and spending time with you. As far as household leadership and what that means to people, when you're feeling success or you're feeling like you're accomplishing a lot in a sphere, whether it's at work or in community service or PTA, a lot of people get a lot of fulfillment and a lot of rewarding feelings from being engaged in their spheres at work or in service, and it's seductive. You're feeling success. You want more of that feeling. So you naturally gravitate to these areas where you're feeling validated, you're feeling the successful accomplishments, or you're getting a lot of affirmation from those around. Hey, you're doing a great job. I just want to let you know, if you weren't here, this whole operation would come to a grinding halt. And so you naturally want to gravitate toward that. And it's not, overt, or it's not intentional to kind of move away from the areas that are more difficult, but just human beings, we like to feel good. So we go to those places where we feel good.
Absolutely. Well, and what we do at work is very visible. I've teased that there really aren't any KPIs for like, hey, how much time did you spend with your family this week? Or how are you doing as a husband or a wife, right? So I want to give you the chance for us to get to know you a little bit better. Do you mind sharing kind of what you would most like us to know about you, kind of the work that you're doing? Because I am emphatic about the family and about me personally doing a lot better as a leader at home.
Sure. I mean, for me, in the theme of your show, authentic leadership, I mean, it speaks very candidly to people about where they are and where they're putting their energy, their time, their focus, all the things that matter in authentic leadership. It just really is important to think about where your energy is going. 80% of us spend at least 2 hours a day managing household tasks, which means we're all leaders. We're all responsible for the four walls that we live in. And I was in that exact situation. I was crushing it at work. I had chaos at home. I was a young married new father, and life was getting more complicated. I used to tell my interns at work who were kind of struggling, should I do this? Should I pursue this goal? I'm thinking about doing this or such. And I would tell them, hey, your life is never going to be less complicated than it is today. So if you're thinking about doing something, do it now, because you can still do it later. It'll just be harder. And I was in that situation. I was being very successful at work. I had a very strong team who believed in me, that trusted me, and we were getting a lot of internal recognition within the company, and we were getting external recognition from industry associations for the work we were doing. And it was a great time to be at work because it seemed like everything we touched was going really well. And having a team that trusted me and was willing to come and discuss hard topics, it helped me as a leader grow. But there was something wrong, in other spheres, and I just couldn't put my finger on it. 25 years in automotive manufacturing, like you said, very tangible results every day. Hey, there's a truck over there. We got to put some parts on it. When are we going to do that? You can see, right? A stack of widgets would go on a truck, and that's how we knew we won for the day. But for as much as those results were making us feel good at work, myself, I wasn't feeling that at home. Like most basic decisions were just kind of languishing or hanging out there. Like we couldn't come to a decision, or we couldn't get to Saturday. At work, we're thinking 3 years out, doing 5-year forecasts and thinking about the future. And at home, it's like, how do we get through tomorrow? Oh, tomorrow's going to be rough. How are we going to get through that? It just didn't compute. And one night on my drive home, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. Was fed up with being fed up. And I said, you know what? I have all these tools and skills that are making me super successful in all these other places. Mm-hmm. What if I just took some of that? Not all of it. What if I took some of that and applied it to my household? Would that help relieve some of this kind of pressure in the system? So my journey was very much the journey I help others with now. Having the aha moment, realizing that there's a problem, realizing that there's a solution to the problem, and that it is attainable and that it can be done. But sometimes you need a leader, or you need somebody to hold you accountable or to help you set the objective.
So today, the name of your company is Homegrown Leadership, which I absolutely love because your emphasis in the home and in helping people show up there better is phenomenal work. And I want to dive into that a little bit more. I just wonder, from your perspective in your consulting work, as you're working with high achieving leaders, we often think that, well, you know what, I'll get to this issue once this season of life calms down, once the kids are in school, maybe when they go away to college, me and the husband have more time together, then things will get better. But what is the problem with delaying getting to work in the family?
Well, and that's where the mindset shift comes in. It's, what would you ever accept that answer at work? Once we get through this crisis, or once we get through this topic of the day, or once we settle this issue over here and things settle down, right? After the holiday break, or after we've all had a vacation, or after whatever, that's an answer that would never be acceptable in another sphere. But the mindset is, to your point, when we're seduced by the accomplishment, or seduced by the success, or seduced by an environment that comes along with structure and a way we do things, right? When we go to work, what's the first thing that happens? We get training. We get told this is how things are done around here. And we get some cultural training. This is the way we do it here. I know you've done it differently elsewhere, but here, this is how we do it. And that time gets spent up front. So what I tell people is, first of all, you would never accept that answer if it were given to you at work. A. B, the longer you wait to build a system to deal with it, and the longer you let things linger, the harder it will be to try to put those things into a process. If you've ever done a turnaround and come into an environment that is completely, gone out of process, or completely lost their sense of control over whatever's going on, and then you try to put that in a box, you're met with very heavy resistance, because everybody's used to just having it however they want. I remember I was in a shop floor, I was in a plant, and one of the quality requirements on the line was we had to take a measurement once an hour. There was a requirement that we measure once an hour. Well, the measurement tool that was being used, it was in disrepair. It hadn't been touched in a while. Like, I came out there, I could tell. I was the newly minted engineer. This is my line. I'm responsible for the stuff. And I came down there, eager beaver, right? Why aren't we doing these checks? We haven't been making those checks for, I won't say how long, but it was a longer time than should have been allowed. And I was like, well, why? Well, that machine over there that takes the measurements hasn't been working in months. So I started, that was my first task, right? Get the measurement system rebuilt. Then once the measurement system was rebuilt, it was, okay, now we need to take the measurements. Well, we've been getting along fine up until now. I said, but how do you know you're making good parts? Well, right. Then the excuses started to come. I said, listen, I got that thing fixed over there. Now we need to start taking measurements. So then I gamified it a little bit. I started putting charts up along the assembly line and having everybody mark when they took a measurement, so that I knew it was taken on the hour. And I had little codes on there like, okay, you need to take a measurement if somebody modifies something on the machine, or if we get a new batch of raw material, or whenever something changes, just mark it on the chart right after you make the measurement, mark it on there. And then what happened was, over time, the buy-in started to increase. We got the system, everybody kind of accepted it, and we found problems because we were making our measurements on schedule, and that was saving a lot of aggravation, because we weren't making hundreds of widgets and then having to go back and rework them or scrap them. People's work was more meaningful because of this system we put in place. But it took a long time because the system was allowed to just deteriorate to the point where, well, this isn't important anymore. And it's the same thing at home, right? If you wait to put a system in place, even if the system doesn't work, you can change it. You can fix it. We're not writing anything on stone tablets. We're not casting anything in concrete. I tell people all the time, do not be afraid to change or kill a system that is not working, because you wouldn't tolerate that at work.
Absolutely. No.
You would not tolerate it. If it wasn't working, you'd change it and try something else, or abandon immediately. Don't accept something that isn't working, because we've all been at work and had to comply with a system that wasn't working, and we're all sitting there saying, why are we doing this?
Family life is such an interesting dynamic, because at work, if someone wasn't pulling their weight, or if they weren't showing up, whatever, that relationship might end. But family doesn't work the same way, right? So while we want to take the principles that apply at work because they make businesses run, they function, they're so easy to see. Where do you even start, or how do you translate those workplace principles, those things that you're doing at work, into family life, because these people are not your employees, right?
Yep. You can't fire anybody that's living in the same house with you. And honestly, discipline in the workplace there's a different purpose there. Where it really starts, and it is the same in both spheres, if you start with values and alignment on values and assessing the fit, that's where it starts. Because all of us have had an experience where we thought, I could do that job. Yeah, I don't really get why they're all kooky around here. I don't really feel like I fit in here, but I can do the job. But you find out very quickly that it's as much about being aligned with the corporate culture or being aligned with the values of the place as it is your competence to do the work. So the starting point is aligning on values, just like you would in the workplace. I mean, we've all done mission, vision, values workshops. We've all done those. Well, what if we did one at home and said, what are the things that matter the most to us? You know, one of those values in my own house, one of them is hard work. When we work hard, because if we work hard, we get done sooner. And if hard work is the value, it's not about completion. It's about the effort that we put in to do the task well.
Yes.
And the system that we had in place wasn't giving us that result. So we had to not be afraid to abandon the system that wasn't working and move to a system that worked better and reinforced our value set.
You know, when you and I chatted earlier, you had mentioned to me this whole thing that you had taken that time to go and spend with your family on creating mission, vision, values. Do you mind sharing, like, where did you get that from? I mean, did you create a framework or did you pull it from something that you had been taught in your business environment?
It was a mix. I mean, like I said, we all go through the workshops at work and there it's a little bit more creative because the value system at work revolves around the results. Yes, we are here for a purpose, but the underlying reason we're all here is because we need this company, this thing, to be financially successful, to keep us all gainfully employed, and so that we can serve our customers who keep coming back because we do a good job. That's what's sitting underneath there. At home, it's like, what do we really value here? What is the underlying system of belief? And so for those that are of a Christian mindset, some of you will say, well, we're a Bible household, like we believe in the Bible. Okay, so inside the Bible, what are the things that your household is going to embody? Because we're all gifted differently, you know, if you subscribe to that. If you're in a different lane religiously or spiritually, it's the same thing though. What are the values that are going to be embodied by your household? Or even if you don't subscribe to a spiritual belief system and you're just purely, you know, hey, just enjoying the ride. Okay, but you want to be a beacon in your neighborhood. We're not just here to be inside our four walls and not acknowledge that there's a whole wide world out there who's counting on us, or a community of neighbors that are counting on us to do our part, or a neighborhood that needs our help or our skills, our tools, the stuff in our garage, whatever it is. There's a way for people to serve each other, no matter what your underlying belief system might be. But for us, the framework was, we believe in the Bible, we follow this biblical standard, and so our household needs to follow a biblical standard. And that was what underlied everything that came after that. And then it was a matter of setting aside time to focus on what mattered most.
Yeah, I was going to ask you on the setting aside the time, because I've heard some families will do like an offsite. Maybe they spend a few days somewhere fun or whatever, and they've got their whiteboards. I mean, you could even do it at your kitchen table, maybe on a Sunday. We don't really have to complicate it. I mean, I don't know. Do you recommend either way? Is getting away maybe a little easier because everybody's focused, or hey, just do it no matter what it looks like?
Yeah, I think it's situational. I mean, if you're in a place where you can do something, or you need it to be something fun, you need to get everybody out of the office. I mean, I had plenty of meetings with my team at work, in the shop floor, in a conference room, in a place that was inside the workplace. So doing it at your kitchen table, at your family room table, at your dining room table, in your, in the backyard, after grilling out, whatever, you can have it there. If you have the means to go off site, or you need that to be the way that it's done to get everybody out of their heads or off their phones or whatever, it's situational. You have to look at the team that you have and figure out what set of circumstances are going to have the highest probability of producing the result that you want to get, or the outcome you're trying to drive toward.
What were some, because you're always going to experience some level of resistance, right? And what you want to do is help people to have buy-in. So it's not them going, oh, okay, I'm just doing whatever Joe says because he's the boss, right? We want them to have a say, them to have a buy-in. So with your family, did you experience any resistance, or because you all sat down together and they had buy-in, you were able to execute on those mission, vision, and values easier?
Yeah, so our process came when my daughter was really young, like around 2, and my son wasn't on the scene yet. So the exercise was more my wife and I, and then it was, when my daughter got old enough and when my son came along and he got old enough, we were able to explain it to them at an age appropriate way. So at the beginning, it was a 3-page document that my wife and I agreed on, and this is what our household was going to be about. But then we distilled it down to 2-word phrases that we put on a canvas and we posted it on the wall. Like, you go to an organization, right? The mission and vision and values are all posted in the break room. They're everywhere. They put them up on the wall. Well, we did the same. And that canvas hung in our kitchen, and it was 2 words for each value. And it allowed us to explain in an age appropriate way, this is what we value. And this is how we do things. And this is how we filter decisions through our house. So when our kids would ask us about something or bring a topic, we would say, well, you look up there and you tell us which of the values should be used to examine this decision that we have to make. And they would be part of the system of decision making, even though they may not make the decision, because there might be reasons why, right? Resources are not available, or we've already committed our resources, or, we just don't have the wherewithal to do something, can't afford it, whatever the answer is. But okay, look through these values and tell us which one you think applies. And if none of them apply, then it's a completely open discussion then. Okay, let's have the conversation. That's kind of the way we approached it. But I was fortunate, I could kind of craft it with my wife. And then when the kids came later, we did it in an age appropriate way.
Well, sometimes we think that things like this are a little bit fluffy, right? Like, oh, I'm going to put a canvas up, and like with many corporations, they paint the values on the wall and they forget about them. They get dusty, whatever. But I just want to add to what you said, because growing up, I remember my mom had this, it's cheesy, whatever, but she had this little thing over the door that said return with honor. So as we would head out, to whatever we were doing as teenagers, we had to remember that. So I commend you for doing that, because we believe sometimes that our children aren't paying attention. Those things stick with them. And so I believe it's you creating intentionality, and really, as with the marketing, right? People have to hear our message like at least 7 times before it sticks. So if those canvases were placed in a place where they could see it over and over and over, that cements in the mind. And you talked a little bit about a community. So we start to get our families in order. They're running much better. I'm sure you have like follow-up meetings or ways that you continue to touch base after you've laid the foundation. But then once that happens, what we're seeing right now is communities are failing a little bit. And you hit on it. You and I were talking early on, you mentioned something fabulous that really struck, that it was like, we don't even know like our 5 surrounding neighbors. But I want to talk about community and how strong families really influence the community. Maybe you can chat on that and even share with us, you saw a need in your local community, a little story you shared that ended up leading you to running for mayor. Tell us a little bit about community, how family impacts that, and why you're doing what you're doing today.
No, absolutely. The household is the fundamental economic and community unit. So if households are healthy, neighborhoods are healthy. If neighborhoods are healthy, communities are healthy. If communities are healthy, cities are healthy, and it just grows from there. But it all starts, no matter what you're doing, from 8 to 5 or 8 to 8 or whatever your shift is, no matter what you're doing, those 4 walls are the place where your leadership is going to matter the most, no matter what else you're doing throughout your day. So as that household strengthens and as your leadership grows, the neighbors start seeing something different coming from this household. They see joy and pride and contentment and things that are emanating from this household, and they get curious about it. And so, you have these opportunities to have conversation. You have opportunities to discuss what's going on, and you have an opportunity to be of service. So if somebody doesn't know something, I might get a question. Joe, I can't remember. Well, when's trash day? Oh yeah. Here's when it is. Or is it delayed this week because of this or that holiday? Yeah. So becoming a resource for neighbors is how it starts. But really the trigger, we have a park about 2 blocks from our house. It's a former school site that was redeveloped. And the developer donated some parkland back to the city, which was great. But when they took the school play equipment out, a lot of it was not able to be certified for safety to be reinstalled. Mm-hmm. So there was very limited equipment put back in the park. And my kids were small at the time, and we took them to this park because it was close to the house. It's 2 blocks away. And one day I took them there, and they asked me to take them somewhere else. And the next closest place for them to play was across a 4-lane county road. It certainly wasn't someplace that I would let them walk to by themselves or ride bikes to by themselves. You know, I was going to have to drive them there. So I was like, well, you know, I know the neighborhood. You know, hey, would anybody like to see something in Flanders Park? Yeah, we'd love to see a playscape. I really think it could be spruced up. Okay, I go to City Hall. Hi, my name is Joe LaRussa. You know, I'd like to talk about Flanders Park. Yeah, we should talk about that. Okay, well, after a year of we should talk about that, and nothing was really moving, I was kind of like, I wonder what it takes to become a leader in the community and have a say about what happens in this park. Well, I'm in a small town. We're 2 square miles, 11,000 people. And here in Michigan, you have to petition to get on the ballot. And it turns out that for our town our size, the requirement was 50 signatures to get on the ballot.
Wow.
So I got on the ballot. I ran for city council. I got on the council. And 2 years later, we had a playscape in Flanders Park. And then we paved the walking path in Flanders Park. And last year, we put adult fitness equipment in Flanders Park. So while kids are playing on the equipment over there, the adults can get a workout in over here. So this park has kind of been, you know, my reason for getting into public service. Now, of course, it's given me opportunities to do a bunch of other things, help with housing, infrastructure renewal, things that my technical expertise really have been able to be deployed to help the community. But it all started with my household being strong enough for us to sacrifice time and energy to serve our community. But if our household wasn't strong enough, and history is littered with examples of people who tried to do more, but they were having trouble at home, and that just derailed. There are movie tropes about the wildly successful politician, lawyer, leader, person who just, you know, their household is what's their undoing. And, you know, Scripture talks about this. If you're a reader of Scripture and you look at 1 Timothy 3, 4, and 5, if anyone does not know how to manage his own family, how can he take care of God's church? Well, if this is the criteria for church leadership to be evaluated, how much more so should that be the case to take care of a company, a neighborhood, a city, a state, a country? This is how it came to be. And in Farmington, you know, in my town, the council selects the mayor. So the mayor's not elected at large by the people. So now imagine a 5-member council, any of whom could be the mayor. You would think that would be pretty contentious. And there have been mayoral selections that went 3-2. Both times that I've been able to serve as mayor, I was ratified by a vote of 5-0. And that, I feel like, it was very humbling that my colleagues saw the spirit of leadership in me to lead the community in that way, when any of them qualify to be the mayor of the city. Have all my colleagues give me their blessing, their endorsement. That is probably one of the most gratifying leadership moments I've ever had, to have the trust of my peers.
Well, you hit on 2 thoughts are coming to my mind. First, someone listening might think to themselves, oh, okay, well, yeah, but Joe's the mayor. He's got visibility and clout and a title. And why do you think sometimes what do we miss when we think that leadership only lives in public office or through titles?
Yeah, I think listeners need to reframe that whole discussion in terms of the value of the leadership that they can deploy in their household, the sphere they control the most. So if you were to take the amount of energy, time, and skill that is deployed to lead a household, and there's actually been research done about this, if you were to outsource all of the things that you do to lead your household and buy services to do those things, it's roughly $140,000 a year. So in addition to our vocation on a daily basis, household leaders are doing a job that, if it were paid, would pay $140,000 a year on average. Each year, 1.3 billion hours of unpaid leadership are deployed each year in the United States. So thinking in terms of What is the value of 1.3 billion hours of time, man hours of time spent on leading households? And what if those 1.3 billion hours could be harnessed in a way that strengthens households instead of in a reactionary mode where you're like a goalie trying not to let anything get by you, right? If you could harness that level of resource, if you had a 1.3 billion man hours to do anything, what could you do with that resource? What is possible with that? Mm-hmm. So I think to reframe it in terms of the value of those resources, I think that is a way for people to reframe and retrain their brain to think about the value of the work that they're doing in the home and the leadership that they're deploying in their home and the impact that that leadership can have for good.
Well, and this is why I wanted to have a conversation with you, because for sure our government leaders, I wish, did a better job in emphasizing how important the family is. I wonder sometimes if they don't, because then, hey, if our families fail, then we are more dependent on societal systems, like welfare or whatever, all of these other programs. But putting that aside, I want to come to something that you're seeing, right? You left this background in manufacturing engineering to now come into homegrown leadership and to consult with high achieving leaders in making their home lives better. What are some of the common challenges or issues that you're seeing today? What are they experiencing in life that makes them kind of go, I can't do this alone. I need some support. I need outside help.
Sure. The three main areas where I see a lot of successful people, or even diligent people, like forget success, people who are diligent, they do what they're supposed to do, and then they come home and then the pressure builds. There's three typical areas where the pressure starts to build. Time, right? If I only had more time, or I wish I had more time, or, it comes out that way. The second is financial, right? How do we run out of money with so much month left here? That resource allocation, it comes out in that. Or social pressure, right? Being too reliant on yourself, reluctant to ask for help. That reminds me, of another story. I needed a pipe cutting tool. I was doing a plumbing repair in my house and I don't have a pipe cutter. And here in the normal mode, go to Amazon, go to the hardware store, buy a pipe cutter. Well, I said, well, what if I did that different? And so I went to a Facebook group for my neighborhood. I said, does anybody have a pipe cutting tool? This guy's like, yeah, I have one. Come pick it up. It's on my porch. Well, I got there, and then when I got there, he comes out of his door. I was like, uh-oh, like what's going to happen now? He says, I want to let you know, I was really glad that you asked to borrow this tool, because he says, he was Asian. Mm-hmm. He says, back where I came from, that was always the first thing we would do, is find out who has it and we can borrow it. He says, I'm becoming too Americanized. I'm going out and buying things that I'm using once and then they sit in my garage. But that social pressure, right? Feeling like you have nowhere to go for help. Feeling like there's nobody to help you, there's no resources, that you're on your own, you're on an island, and that we don't have what we need to get this done, and there's no support, and I'm alone. Mm-hmm. That social pressure is really a third one that I think is least acknowledged, but probably the one that is the most painful, right? Time, Benjamin Franklin says, you have the same time that everybody else has. Resources, money, this kind of thing, that can be managed. You can make more. You can reallocate what you have. There are methods and tools to manage finances, but that social one, the social one is the one, if you spend more time and energy on the relationships you're building at work than you are at home, well, when you change jobs, or when your job is changed, are those people going to be the ones that are going to shovel your walk when you're laid up? Are they the ones that are going to take in your mail when the mailbox is overflowing and you forgot to cancel? Are they the ones that are going to share a holiday with you? Don't misunderstand. Work relationships are important. Having a strong network and being able to access expertise and building a network at work is valuable. Full stop. But it is equally valuable and equally important to build that social network in real life at home and beyond your family. Like, I ask people, who could you call outside your immediate family to give you a ride to the airport, to loan you $50 or whatever, to help you with a task, to help you move something in your house? Who outside your family could you call? And a lot of people are like, ugh, why would I do that? Well, because you need help.
Well, social isolation is a thing. I mean, especially the more that we are connected through virtually, we believe we're connected, online. Yeah, I've got friends. You don't have real connections. And I love what you're sharing because I'm part of a community where we have like a text thread. And literally just today, I had a mom say, hey, I've got to get my daughter up to Salt Lake and who can help me? And I'm so grateful because, yeah, if something happened to me, I knew I could rely on my neighbors. And we've built those relationships. Luckily, where I live, we've been here a while, so we've gotten to know them. But that social isolation for sure is so real. So when someone is looking to, when they work with you, I guess, are you giving them ideas on how to get more connected in their community? Are you coaching them one-on-one? Are you putting them in groups so that they have a bigger network? Like, what does that look like when that person says, Joe, I need some help. Guide me here.
Yeah, first things first. I mean, again, establishing the baseline. Where is the most pressure coming from? Because at work, we can't solve everything everywhere all at once. We have to pick something and work on it and nail it and then move on to the next thing. So the assessments that I do with my clients is the most important thing to identify where's the biggest source of pressure and how do we relieve that first. Then it's about implementing tools and skills they already have and just deploying those at home. I ask a lot of questions like, if this were happening at work, what would you do? If you were told that you can't hire more people, you have to figure out how to get this done with the people that you have. Well, what would you do? Well, I would probably have them do a time tracker and help, figure out where is there duplicate work happening somewhere, or is more than one person doing the same thing? Do I have too many meetings and we need to streamline? So for the people who have time pressure, I have a time tracker. I hand that to them and I say, go track your time. It's for one day. You track your time in 10 or 15 minute increments. You categorize the time that you're spending. So you log the task. You say how long you spent on it, and then you categorize it. Was it personal care? Was it chores? Was it work? Was it preparing dinner? Or whatever it was. And then we just say, here's how you're spending your time. Now, how do you want to spend your time? And you make two charts and you say, here's the today, here's what you want. So now what are we going to change to get from here to here? So on the time side, it's using tools that you would already use at work to gain efficiency, find ways to make people more productive, outsource services to free up people's time. If I can't hire a person, maybe I can hire a service to offload a task that my team either doesn't have the skills for, takes them too long. Maybe I have to buy a tool. Maybe I have to buy software. Maybe I have to find resources that will unlock that efficiency. On the finances side, hey, if you were told that we can't give you any money for this, what would you do? You'd go squeeze your budget. You would, that's what you would do at work. If you were told you can buy that, but you got to cover it in your own budget, you would go find it.
Absolutely.
And so it's the same thing. So then it comes out, oh, well, I guess I need a budget at home. Well, yes, you should have a budget. And there's a million different templates and other people who help with that. So sometimes it's just kind of getting them started on that one. But on the social one, that's the toughest. Because once you get control of time and finances, now it's like, well, how about this social thing? Well, simple thing. Do you know who's behind the 5 doors around your house?
I liked this concept that you shared. Yes, tell us about that.
Do you know the names of who is behind the 5 doors? So at your house, at least in my neighborhood, I've got one on each side of me, and I've got one across the street, and they're 2 neighbors. I got 5 doors around my house. And those people, I know all their names. When I see them outside, I wave hi. When I see that they need help, I run over there and help. It's simple things like that help build relationships in real life, and knowing those names. And then if we forgot something, if my kids need a place, when my kids were younger and they didn't have keys to the house yet, they could hang with Miss Linda and Mr. Richard for an hour, or Miss Julie and Mr. Devin, or they could go to the neighbor's house until we got home. Or we could ask them, hey, can you just walk over and check in on the kids for us? Or whatever the task was, right? Whatever it is. But that social thing, and especially for the introverts, right? And I'm here to tell the introverts, it doesn't always have to be active. Putting yourself in an environment where you can just observe.
Tell me, because I'm an introvert. Tell me.
So just observing people, right? And seeing people doing their normal things and being observant, it helps you kind of build a relational anchor with people. Or you go to the same place. When you go for coffee, go to the same place for coffee. You'll be a regular. The barista will get to know you. They will know your drink. They will ask you how your day is going, and it will be a very slow burn. It'll be a slow burn. It'll get there though, where you start to build a connection with another person. And these are very easy tasks or things that you can do to start building social network in real life, IRL, social interaction. Knocking on the doors across the street, showing up to the same place, being observant. These are all easy ways to start building those things in real life.
Well, and I've got a few follow-up questions that I want to ask, but you've got a couple of assessments that you help people go through just to kind of kick things off and get started so they can have a little bit of self-recognition, as well as like a home values worksheet that if someone's like, hey, I want to do this thing that Joe's telling me about, where do we get that? Like, where could we download that resource if we were like, hey, let me start here?
For sure. The assessments are on the website, homegrownleadership.net. So right on the homepage, if you can go straight there and pick which one. I also have a full length one that covers all three areas. If you're really an eager beaver and you want to do all three, those are all there as well. But for those that already know that they've made up their minds that they want to take that first step, it starts with values and aligning on those values. And so the family values worksheet is the free resource that I offer to people who might be watching this. Go to homegrownleadership.net/FVW. That's Foxtrot Victor Whiskey. And you'll land on a page where you can download that resource. It'll get sent to you, and it's a grid. It's got a bunch of words that are good thought starters for your values that matter most to your household. And there are blanks in there. If none of those words speak to you, you can fill in the blank and circle those and say, these are the ones. I usually recommend circling between 5 and 10, not less than 5, not more than 10, because again, values are supposed to be like the fundamental things. Like, these are the things that they do not bend. They don't break. Like, these are the things that matter the most. If these things are on the line, we are going up the hill and charging the hill on these things.
Okay. I'm going to head over and grab one of those. I would ask a personal question. You had been in engineering, manufacturing. What made you want to step away from that to, launch Homegrown Leadership and really work with family leaders today?
Well, I was pulled and drawn to it because at work, I was already doing these things. My subordinates, they would come, we would have one-on-ones. How's it going? How's it going at home? Like, is everything okay? Because especially if I noticed, productivity was kind of getting a little bit challenged, or somebody's mood shifted, or something changed, their demeanor, their disposition. Part of being a leader is recognizing what's going on with your team. So I was drawn to it and pulled toward it because I was doing it at work. And then it started happening, as I said, people move around, they change jobs, things happen, people move away. And I would get those queries, even though they didn't work for me anymore or didn't work with me anymore. I would get questions. Joe, do you have 30 minutes, or can you call me on your way home? I got a question. So it turned into something that I was side hustling for about 7 years before it turned into, and somebody said, you know what, Joe, it's time. You need to turn this into something more. There's so many families that need help. There's so many people out there that are struggling with this. You need to focus on it. And, I'm at a point where that was an option, and I looked at it and said, is it viable? And it is. And people were very encouraging. And so it was more, I was drawn to it. I was pulled toward it because it was already happening organically. And now it has just turned into something that I said, it's time to put some resources into this and some real energy into it and see, how I can help more people like me.
I love this because as leaders, we are so often willing to invest in professional development to, climb the corporate ladder, to lead our teams better. But then again, we'll always kind of push that home life aside a little bit. And I love your insights on what is really at stake. If we look at home being the foundation of society, of just everything, right? What's at stake for us personally and our society if our families don't receive the same attention or level of leadership that we give to our work life?
Well, kind of like I alluded to before, strong community leadership starts with good household leadership. So as we continue to go down the path of choosing our leaders for our communities, if their household is doing well, I'm probably more willing to give them the authority to make a decision on my household's behalf. So I think what's at stake is, if households are unhealthy, neighborhoods are going to be unhealthy. If neighborhoods are unhealthy, communities are going to be unhealthy. It's like the reverse of what I had said before, right? So strong household leadership, strong neighborhood leadership, strong community leadership leads to all of the economic, economic outcomes that people are interested in talking about all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It leads to stronger social networks so that people are taking care of each other. It just gives more strength and more vitality to the places where we live in ways that nothing else can replace that. Telling somebody to go and serve is different than becoming part of a network that serves. And that is what's at stake.
You hit the nail on the head because it shapes our communities. And we've seen it. I grew up in a pretty rough inner city, and families were very broken. And you saw it. You saw the trauma that caused in the school system, the disrespect to teachers, the violence, the crime. So it really shaped our community to the fact that where my mom said, we can't live here anymore. We're getting out, right? So it shapes where we end up. And, you shared with us a couple of first steps we could take as far as looking at mission, value, setting aside some time, going to your site to getting some resources. Any other actionable step that you would say, look, if you're listening and you really want to prioritize your home and family life, what's one simple thing I could do today to really shift that focus?
I would say sit down with your home team and just ask, how's it going? Just like you would do at work. You check in with your team and just ask a simple question. How's it going? And I guarantee you're going to get an answer. Well, what do you mean? And that's the conversation starter. Well, how's it going? Are we where we want to be? Even if it's just with your spouse or your partner, or if it's, with your oldest child, like pick one person and just have a check-in like you would in passing in the hallway. Not everything has to be a formal meeting. That's another thing you learn in the workplace. You learn more at the water cooler sometimes than you do in the meetings. Right. So just have those conversations. That's an actionable step. If you're in a men's group at church, if you are in a parents group, if you're in a community group that helps families, go to homegrownleadership.net. I've spoken at churches, I've spoken in community groups and helped them get to that aha moment and started leading them through that journey. I mean, there's help out there, and you're not alone. It starts at home. Have the conversation with your home team, ask how it's going, get that conversation started, and then visit homegrownleadership.net, look for some resources, get the help, find a way to strengthen your household, because you would do the same at work or in any other sphere where you felt like the answer to the question, how's it going, is it could be better.